Hi there, and welcome to the latest episode of Pat's Procrastination, brought to you by the Pat's Propaganda YouTube channel. Please do not forget to be subscribing to said YouTube channel, as this show is exclusively there. So here we are, episode 44. It's week 11. It's Patriots versus Rams. Post-game recap wrap show. Chudders, myself, Clazzy Clare. So, Chudders, how's things with you?
We're doing all right, aren't we? I think it was a positive loss. Is that a good phrase to put on it, do you think?
If you want to, it's a bit icky, but okay. It's true. It's very true. You are not wrong.
So go on then, Claire. What were your positives? What were your thoughts on the game?
Drake May's really good, and I'm very glad that we took him over Jaden Daniels.
I don't know what second needed then, but we did have a choice.
But it's true. And the tight ends are fab. And I love the tight ends.
And the others that we had a choice over.
You asked for my opinion and you got it. And then you deconstructed it. Doesn't that make it change?
Correct. So would you say,
yeah.
Because this is certainly the way it's a trend that I've seen throughout the season, I'm feeling more and more confident in Drake May, and less confident of those that are around him.
No, I'm not kind of that way and that way. Yes, I'm more and more confident in Drake May, but going into it, I thought he was going to be good. Obviously, I didn't know skill set, but I thought he was going to be good. I wanted them to take him. I was happy they took him, that kind of thing. So whilst I'm not completely shocked that he's really good, sort of thing. Very pleased that he's really good. As for the coaching and things, I think they mentioned it on PU. It's like the week that they win, the coaching's great. The week that they lose, the coaching sucks. It's like they're still in their first season. You know, Mayo had so little experience in regards to head coaching and stuff going forward. AVP, I feel, is developing. He wasn't, whilst he's been in the league and whilst he's been with quarterbacks for a long time, 15 years, I think it was. He hasn't been a play caller. He hasn't been an OC. This hasn't been his role really, other than a couple of games for the Browns. So I'm not completely over there when it comes to the coaching. I'm concerned because there's been a lot of problems, but I still feel like patience, they're only halfway through the season. It's their first season as a collective. I still feel like we should, give them a chance, sort of thing, before we start really piling on. But yes, I agree, there are issues there and there are problems when it comes to that. I'm not of the camp of, let's switch out AVP and give Drake May a second year, a different OC for his second year and things like this. Those sorts of discussions start to concern me, because you're losing the continuity. And we've seen from so many different factors in so many different departments, like the O-line and stuff, continuity builds greatness. So that would concern me. But whilst I'm worried about the coaching, I'm not sort of over there the way you described it. So I agree mostly.
So what were the positives you saw on offense?
The tight ends. Hunter Henry is fab, and Hooper's been doing really well. Unfortunately, Bell had 1 target for 0 receptions. So I don't know if he's going to be that, bargain pickup gadget player that they thought maybe he could be. He might still need some time. We don't know. My expectations weren't huge for him, and they're sort of dropping as the season goes. Now, it might be just a lack of utilization. They're just not using him, and that's fair enough. But whilst we're having such sort of poor performance from most of the wide receivers, I hesitate to say, but it's kind of true. You'd think that maybe they'd utilize the likes of him more, because they need something to inject into the offense. But Hunter Henry, I love how he's developing. He's still that dependable, good tight end. And it's so interesting to see that he's gone through like different quarterbacks in the system, and he's still that guy. It doesn't matter where they've put him. He's still that guy, and I love that, and that's why he's my guy. But Hooper's development is great. He had 4 for 4, and it feels like he's growing too. So whilst they need the tight ends to perform, because the wide receivers aren't, it feels like they're really trying to perform. So that part of the offense has me quite excited. The Drake May tight end bit, if you want to section it off and just look at it individually, those are the bits that when we come to game day, I'm really excited to watch. And one interesting point I want to make is I try and make notes when I watch the game. Fortunately, I don't need to make as extensive now that I don't have to do the written recap. But I noticed that I was that into just watching the game. I am anyway, because I'm a fan. But when I looked at my notes the other day to do a bit of show prep, I stopped halfway. I only made notes on the first half. I didn't make any notes on the second half because I was just too involved in watching the game, which is quite interesting because it hasn't been like that sort of for a while, maybe more before this season, I suppose. But that I shocked myself. I opened my notebook and went, oh, blank page. Oh, better check the game book. So that was good. That was good in reflection that I didn't make notes. But sorry, hogging it all.
Well, I was going to say, for Hooper, who's on a 1-year deal, do you want the Pats to extend them in the off season?
Yeah. If he continues to develop as he is. Hunter and Hooper, I feel, as we've gone through this, look like they're developing well. I believe that if they kept those as stability and drafted a young guy to bring in under them and develop and grow under them, what? They've got 3 Ts now, so what's wrong with having 3 Ts then?
So you're getting rid of Bell? You're done on Bell?
Maybe. It's mid-season, maybe. He's in my maybe pile. Depends what the draft's got.
But this is his first season. Surely you got to give him time to develop.
That's true. No, that's very true. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that. I just might want something else.
You just want a 4th tight end, don't you?
Okay, bring me number 4 then. Yeah.
I figured that's probably how anything else on offense that pleased you?
Too many this morning. Well, Butte and Pop are good. I just wish they'd be. No, I can't say I wish they'd be better. That's wrong. They're developing as well. It's just seem to be lumping the wide receiver core as a whole, and it's underperforming as a whole. But if you want to isolate them, I didn't want to take all the stuff away from you because then you'd have nothing to talk about.
So let's go with receivers then. I thought Bourne and Douglas had good games. Like I said, Butte was all right. He had a couple of drops. It's the massively disappointing element in the room. You finish a game and your left tackle had more targets than Baker and Polk combined.
Yeah.
It's
why we need the answers to why. We'll never get them. We won't get Mayo saying, well, they suck or anything like that. I'm not saying they do, but we won't get that. Okay, you can say it then. You say it then.
Baker's just not getting a look in. He did on special teams. We get to that in a bit, but as a receiver, he's not really getting a look in. Polk, he was wide open a couple of times and wasn't targeted. I just get the feeling that the chemistry's not there with Drake May.
It doesn't help
and
when they keep dropping the ball.
First round quarterback, second round receiver, both coming in fresh, straight out of college. Boom, go make a relationship there that can last for years and years and years. And it's not happened at all with Polk. He looks costly, bad. He's more likely to lose you a game than win you a game at the moment.
Question. I agree. Question. What you're saying about the bringing up drafted together, blah, blah, blah. But he may be developing that with the likes of Booty and Pop Douglas. So does it actually, how much does it matter?
Okay. Long term, it doesn't. I mean, if he makes a great relationship with 3-4 receivers, it doesn't have to be Polk. The disappointment is you invested a high draft pick in Polk.
Yeah.
And it's not even that you just invested a high draft pick, which you did, as a top 40 draft pick. You also had the option of other wide receivers who sadly it appears to have gone on to be great, but you targeted him. This wasn't like you just took the best one that was on the board. You didn't really have a choice. You just, and I don't want to play rude here, but that's essentially what happened with Drake May. We took the best of the three that was on the board. The other two are gone. It looking like it was a great decision. But that was the situation the Patriots were in. It's not like they were picking first. They decided to drop down to third and take that one. They took the best one on the board, and he's looking brilliant. It looks a great decision. It's worked out well for the Patriots. With Polk, you had options on the board, and you didn't like the options. The option you wanted, you dropped down and took, and it's failing miserably. So you invested a lot into this guy, and it's not paying off in any way whatsoever at the moment. If he's on the field, you're more worried he's going to get you a flag than he is going to get you a touchdown. And I appreciate you got a touchdown last week, but there's no confidence in his game at all. And like I said, it's the chemistry with the quarterback that doesn't appear to be there at all. And it's not like it was there with Brissett when he was in, and now it's just a Drake May thing. It just seems like he doesn't look a good fit at all.
See, I agree with you. Don't disagree on anything. I'm not big into they could have took XYZ. They didn't. It's done. I don't enjoy spending, this is personal rant. I don't enjoy spending time. Oh, well, they could have got so and so, and they should have got so. There's so much that could have been done, should have been done, would have been done, that other NFL teams did as well. And that's a bit of a bugbear for me. That's who we've got. We can admit that if it tanked, if it failed, whatever, I'm all for that. I don't have a problem with that. But they could have had so and so, but they didn't. And so what are we going to do? What are you going to do that they didn't? What can you do that they didn't?
On if it tanked or it didn't, if Brissett was still under center, would you be saying this season is a tank?
No, I didn't mean tank in that respect. I meant as in the pick of Polk being bad.
Yeah, well, I think it's bad at the moment, but
I wasn't disagreeing.
The only reason really we have positivity around this team, and like we opened the show by saying it was a positive loss, and you can disagree with that. I did disagree with that. But the reason we have positivity of the future, hope, is because of Drake May.
Mm-hmm.
If we were still running out Mac, or we were going with Zappi, or we have Brissett, or we were going with Joe Milton, we would not have that same positivity and hope.
No, but I wouldn't be saying when they took Polk, they should have taken whoever. That's the bit that I had, not the... What is the point of wasting the time saying, well, they should have taken him?
That's not me. Whilst I am criticising Polk, I'm not criticising Polk with that. I'm criticising the front office who made the decision.
Yeah, and I agree with you.
The only good decision, it appears, that's come out of the draft so far is Drake May. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that wasn't a decision. You didn't have.
I want to push back. They could have, if they wanted Daniels, they could have tried to move up.
I don't think they could have.
Okay.
I think like, bar offering every draft pick for the next 3 years and a couple of players, I don't think Washington would have traded you.
Anyway, people don't want this on the show. This is
my point. Is, I'm assessing the front office. I'm not trying to criticize necessarily Mayo, Polk directly. It's relevant because a bad decision was made.
Yes.
If you'd have stayed put, if you'd have taken one of the other receivers, it would have been a better decision than the decision they made. So in my mind, it is relevant to discuss, as in this latter part of the season, we're now going to be assessing the players we have and looking at our needs for next season, because the reality is we aren't eyeing up who our postseason opponents are going to be. And so something I was going to get to in a bit was looking at who our free agents are coming up into this off-season. Who do we want to be assessing to be retaining? And the same is true, sadly, with the rookies, because you'd be looking at the moment, you're going, why are we got Polk on this team? He will stay on this team. He's a second-round pick. But it's almost detrimental to the team to be having on the field at the moment. It's looking that bad, but we try not to labour that point too much. Other positives.
I was going to say you need to move on because you won't have time.
I was pleased to see Marcus Jones get a snap on offense, another little gadget play. Nice to see. I don't mind that. You've got talented players who can do something with the ball. Let's try and utilise them. Like you said, Henry Cooper had good games, and they're looking like great tools there. Poor, we've talked about Poke. Stevenson had another fumble. The ground game on general was okay. I'm not saying it was great. It was okay. Stevenson, another fumble. That's disappointing. Obviously, May's fumble was disappointing. Do you want to talk about that final throw for interception? It was a bad throw again, which he was great all game. That's now the second time he's thrown interception, which doesn't necessarily lose you the game. It just costs you an opportunity to win it.
Talk about it if you want to talk about it.
Well, who are you putting it on, do you think? Do you see it more as a bad throw, or do you see it as the receiver didn't turn around? Because in my mind, looking at it, even if he did turn around and be facing the quarterback the whole time, he wasn't catching that ball because it flew over his head. It was a bad throw.
To be honest, I haven't dwelled on it. It's a rookie thing, and he's developing, and he said that. Looking at it as a whole, I think it's if you want to throw blame, if that's what you want to do here, I'm putting it on both. Maybe a bit of miscommunication, bit of an overthrow, bit of a bad route, that kind of thing. I don't look at it and put it on one or the other. I think it's just a bit of a bad situation personally, but I'm sure people will disagree and want to blame an individual. So that's just my opinion, though.
Fair enough. So let's move on to defense. Do you have any positives on defense?
This was really hard because not really. All I got was white, sort of. That's about all I got for my defense good section. The section of my page that allows like split into 4. Now we do it this way, and like good on the offense, bad on the offense, good on the defense, bad on the defense. And I was like, oh shoot, I haven't really got, because like Nakua had his way with them and stuff like that. It wasn't the best day, so I don't really have much good. Now I might have missed somebody, so feel free to correct me if there's people that I missed.
You didn't really miss anyone. I didn't even have one on my good list. The only positive...
It was a sort of.
The only positive I had from the defense was that you got Barmore back and he played 20 snaps. About 40% of the snaps. It wasn't amazing, but let's hope he can get back. He's not played for a year, so let's hope that it's a road to return. Hopefully that can help shore up the defense in the longer run. Negatives, do you have any in that column by any chance?
Yeah, I have a few. I have a few, but you can go first.
Okay,
well, we'll run out of time.
I'll go with the run defense. Wasn't great again. A good week last week, shutting down Swift, but then not so great this week. They could pretty much, Karen Williams could pretty much do what he wanted to, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. I got.
So you've gone white. I'll leave you to talk about the secondary maybe, but I put the opposite about, not necessarily white specifically, but they couldn't get any pressure on Stafford. They didn't touch him all day.
No.
I didn't think the pass defense was very good either.
To be fair, white's in my good only because it was empty. So it was white, sort of. Because I had a blank piece of paper. I had to write something. I'm not saying like they really did any good. It was a sort of, I think he's just, I don't know, maybe it's just more my fondness for the player because he's a bit of a brutal, dominant player. And I do enjoy watching him play. He's definitely a defensive player. I enjoy watching play. But no, it was, that was just like an in brackets kind of don't leave this column empty situation. But yeah, like you said, they failed to register a sack.
They didn't get a QB hit, I don't think. That's why he's untouched. Yeah,
no, just I've got defense bad, coaching Duggar failed to register a sack. That's the insight of my notes, folks.
I thought the secondary plan didn't work. They went for more zone than man. It didn't really work. One thought I had yesterday was because they seem to be playing quite well in mostly man this season. When Gonzo was tied up with one guy, whoever it was, he seemed to be generally locking them down. Jones, maybe a bit of cover on the other side. Whoever the secondary receiver was, it was playing all right. Jones in the slot. I feared that this was almost harking back to the Super Bowl against the Rams, where the Patriots completely changed up their defensive system on the day. And Murphy came out saying, I couldn't believe they did it. We'd spent all 2 weeks training for this, and they did the complete opposite with man and zone. And I feared that if they just tried to do the same, they've played man so well all season, if they tried to go zone instead, and it just didn't work. They had 2 receivers over 100 yards. Cup and Takura, who just just tore them apart, basically. Just open all the time. Got the 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 yards, whatever was needed. It just ate us up.
Maybe because, and again, we're looking at a coaching staff that's new, naive, still learning, developing, growing, sort of thing. They tried to do something and they weren't experienced enough to execute it, perhaps.
The disappointing part on the defense and the season as a whole was the hope was, whilst it's technically the first-time defensive coordinator, the hope was there was going to be the continuity from the previous years. Obviously, you're not going to have check there, but the thought was, okay, well, Mayo's now head coach, but hopefully he can still be in that defensive room, putting those game plans together. You're still retaining that expertise. Covington, who seemed to be very coveted, very highly regarded, which is why they chose him over Belichick, Steve Belichick, as DC. The hope was, okay, they'll continue. There's a lot of the guys that were brought back. Admittedly, you've lost some through injury, but the hope was on the defensive side, there would be a bit more continuity. It was the offensive side that there was going to be a lot of change. And so, yeah, it's disappointing, I guess, really, how that's gone.
They may have fallen short of kind of, what's the word I'm after? I hate this one. It's first thing in the morning. The fact that Mayo isn't their defensive coordinator now. Now, we thought, like you said, that he'd still have his fingers in the pie, so it wouldn't affect it. Maybe that's the thing that got affected the most, is the loss of him out of maybe those meetings, that situation, whatever, has impacted the defense a lot more than anticipated. It's unfortunate that the OC isn't experienced enough. You know, if you had the likes of maybe McDaniels or something, you could do the sort of split that some of the other teams have got, where the head coach is over the defense more because he's defensively minded, and the OC kind of just gets on with it. And I don't think they've got a setup at the moment that he's experienced enough to do that. If they did, perhaps the defense would not be sort of suffering as much because of the fact that you could have that. It kind of looks like that's what they could do with, is Mayo back over on the defense more, but the offensive side may suffer. So it's a bit of a catch-22, as they say. Also, he's going to be trying to do everything because it's his first year as a head coach. He wants to be involved in everything and obviously succeed, prove himself, that kind of thing. Learn as well. He's still learning and growing, and he said himself, because he's a defensive guy. So it's a lot. This is why I'm loath to judge all the coaching so significantly. And I don't disagree with you that there's issues. It's just everything is so very, very new. I mean, geez, it takes me ages to learn new stuff now, especially as I'm getting older. So, you know, you don't pick things up immediately. Things aren't successful from day one, kind of thing. Maybe it's just I'm not disagreeing with you, so I'm not glossing over it. I'm not being blind to the problems. Maybe I'm just a bit more patient, sort of accepting of the issues more, because I feel it's still too new, possibly.
I would
Special
say
teams.
Well, just to respond to what you said there, I would say I do think that AVP has been instilled as a sort of head coach of the offense, and Mayo have to be on that side of the ball. That's not to say it's been going great, so maybe Mayo has had to be involved more than he'd wanted to be. But likewise, I'd kind of hoped that he would be head coach, but head coach of the defense, and AVP, who brought in a lot of staff underneath him, as we've talked about before, would be head coach of the offense, and you could just leave it all in his hands. Don't know exactly how that's played out. On your point about it being the first year for everyone, and you don't expect it to be instant success, etc. Open question: do you think it was a mistake then to instill that? Because you don't have to have first-time head coaches, first-time everything when you're starting afresh. You could have gone down the route of an experienced head coach. We talked about Vrabel at the time. Do you think maybe that was a mistake then, the way it's panned out, and not having the experience in the room, having people having to learn on a day-to-day basis? Because that wasn't the route you had to go. There's other teams who, you look at the Chargers, who were on a rebuild, but they brought in an experienced head coach in Harbaugh. And you look at what's happened at Washington, who are looking like they're going to be a postseason team this year in their first year of a rebuild. Other teams where it's failed, like the rebuild that gone on at Chicago. Obviously, you can look at the mess that's gone on in the Jets. It doesn't have to be. It didn't have to be fresh and new. Do you think maybe with hindsight it would have been better to have gone with something more experienced?
But hindsight's easy to play. Oh yeah, we shouldn't have done that because it wasn't successful. The other thing is, it looked like Mayo was always going to be the head coach. So from what we've been led to believe and things like that. So he was always going to have to start somewhere. If that seemed
because I agree, it looks like
it feels too
plan. That was the plan that was always going to be executed. Do you think that was a mistake, or having that plan in so early? You always wanted to have a guy who you knew was not going to have any experience. Have you shot yourself in the foot potentially?
Personally, it feels too early because you're judging his first. He's going to have a first year at some point, and he's going to have to learn things at some point. So some of this it's a moot point because we were led to believe, or we've been told, or it's been out there that this was always going to be, because he was always going to be the head coach. So it sort of feels like, well, it was always going to happen, so it's got to happen sometime. Now, if he had been appointed from somewhere else and he had been more of a choice, maybe you could look at it and say, oh, maybe I'd have preferred them to choose him over him. It feels like it wasn't going to be a choice, so there's no point. Am I making sense?
I think so.
Okay, just checking. But for me at the moment, it's like, it still feel my opinion, my judgment is, I feel it's still too early. Revisit the end of the season and see how he's gone, and see how you feel about setting up for the next season. But I still feel like one season isn't very long to judge the intricateness of what these positions are, and the intensity and the pace of what they do in the NFL. It's a lot in a short space of time, in like a 18-week period. It's a lot to judge, really, personally, but that's just my opinion. I know a lot of people would be ready to get rid of Mayo now, and that's fine. We've always said on this show, you fan your way, I'll fan mine. My opinion is bit more of a wait, patience, we'll see, which is very unusual because I am super impatient, really. But I don't know, it depends on situations, I guess. But I feel at the moment that topic it doesn't feel relevant, because they didn't choose between. I know you said about Vrabel and he's looking quite good right now, sort of thing, as an option, but he wasn't an option. We were told this was foretold, this was the future, this was what it was going to be. So, and if that's the case, he's always going to have had his first year. So let's just get it over and done with, sort of thing. I don't know. How do you feel? Because there's all this talk of the lack of identity. I wanted to throw this in, actually. We'll probably have to wrap up on this topic, but how are you feeling about that situation with Mayo and stuff?
I'm not a fire Mayo bandwagon, and I don't think it's massive. I think he's fairly getting some criticism and questioning, because I think there, in fairness, a lot of different areas where he could be questioned. Personally, I would give any head coach maybe 3 years, in as much as I'll break that down. The first year, where, barring complete disaster, I can write it off to, you're trying to instill a new system, a new ethos, a new brand of football. You're inheriting everything that came before. I'm not expecting you to necessarily go out there and win everything. So I can write off a first year, which seems to be the way that this is pretty much going. A second year where I'd want to see improvement. If there's not improvement, then obviously, you could be in a hot seat. That doesn't mean you have to be in the postseason or looking at more, but just, so let's say we finish this year with 4 wins. The next year, I think we should be looking more at 7 wins, for example. Then a third season where, okay, now you go, hopefully going the right trajectory. You've had 3 draft picks, you've had free agents come and go. Now I'm expecting to see you competing for, it could only be a division title, postseason berth. I'm not saying you have to be competing Super Bowl, but now I expect you to be making us a competitive football team.
Yeah.
That's the sort of acceptable path I can see, and that's where, okay, amazing. The first year, I can write off this first year. Criticism I would have is of Robert Kraft. I don't think he's gone through the right process. He seems he made a decision years ago because he had a nice conversation on a phone, on a plane, and that's sort of taken the path of his football team down a certain route, having based on that one thing. I know you knew the guy before that, he played for you or whatever, but that doesn't seem a good due diligence process.
I think sorry.
Yeah, cool.
I think as you're making that point about the 3 years and about the win losses and stuff that you touched upon, I don't know, but I think maybe the thing that will indicate more, maybe from the fans' viewpoint than anything else, is during those 3 years how successful they are in the draft. And I think that's going to affect the fan base opinion significantly. It doesn't, I'm loath to say it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. The win rate, of course, matters. But what they do in those numbers may be slightly less, particularly the first 2 years, this year and next year. I'd like, I tick that box, is what happens in this next draft, because you are then completely and utterly out of the Belichick situation. This up and coming draft, the 2025 draft, you're away from all that. You're totally into Wolf Mayo territory completely. So that is going to be very significant.
I agree, and that's
what happens
about assessing the draft they've just done, and in my mind, they did poorly.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Every man and his dog would have made it 3. So some people might have. It was at the time. Some people might have traded down, took a tackle, or gone the receiver route, or whatever. But I think 9 out of 10 Pats fans would have stayed put and taken May. After that, everything that was free choice, appears to have gone badly. And it's not only that; it's how they decided to not build an offensive line. That's why I think a lot of pressure on that front office, and that's why I do happily speak out on that. Right, we are running out of time here. So special teams, field goal block, but there was a good return from Baker, but you gave up some a good return as well. It was just not. It was an up and down game, I thought, from special teams.
Sure, we're not under contract that we have to cover every single thing. We're just recapping the game. It doesn't have to.
Another couple of stats that frustrate is one of the things I always like to look at as a good indicator if you're going to control the game is time of possession and offensive snaps. Patriots won that 37 minutes to 22, 73 snaps to 51, but yet you didn't move the ball as many yards. Obviously, you didn't get as many points. They weren't effective enough on offense. It's good to see they were winning those battles, but obviously disappointing to see you couldn't be effective with it. Underrated player of the day, Marcus Jones. I'm going for. He had an offensive snap, 9 tackles and a breakup. So he's okay. Obviously, I think the best player on the day probably was was my underrated. One thing I think for a future week is we'll have a look at the players who won't be in contract in the summer, and let's have a look at who we want to look at and maybe decide on who we want to be assessing this latter part of the season now to look at whether they retain. Obviously, you've already said about Hooper and what a good game he had. So this weekend coming up, Squish the Fish. We're away. Dolphins. They've just come off beating the Raiders. They have looked better since Tua was back, sadly. What's your prediction, Claire?
It's a good question. I haven't got one. Give me a second. What's yours?
All your preparation.
I know.
So while she's thinking of numbers, playing number one in the head, my sadly lost. I've gone 7-20. I think.
Say that again.
27-20. I've gone. And I know I must be really predictor back because I was right this weekend.
Yeah, you're on. It's 4-3 at the minute. Yeah, 4-3 at the moment. I'm going to go for a win, but I'm going to say it's going to be a really low scoring game. Pat's 14, Finn's 13.
Oof. Real goal win or something. Is it touchdown maybe?
People are like, she just pulls these numbers out of her. And yeah, I do. So that is it for a slightly rushed at the end because we did procrastinate on Procrastination, Pat's Procrastination, the post-game recap wrap and extras show this week. So that is it from him, Chudders, myself, Claire, Clazzy Clare. As usual, tune in next time, folks. As always, go Pats.
G.